From the beach to displayed shells, in this video I'll show you how I clean my seashells, and I'll show you an awesome use of steel wool in the finishing process. My name is Roxanne with Florida Beach Walks, a channel where I share my shelling beach walks. I wanted to make this video because I often get asked in video comments and messages how I get my shells looking so good in these shell haul displays. Now there are lots of different ways to clean shells, and some shells don't even need to get cleaned, just a sand rinse off, but the majority need a little work to restore them to their full beauty, and this is how I do it. Here are my basic steps in which I take in cleaning my shells, pretty much in order, but depending on the shell, some get skipped or repeated to get the outcome I'm looking for. I've broken this video up into chapters so you can jump to the different sections as needed. My first step is a bleach or soap soak using common household bleach and dish soap. I don't use straight up bleach to soak any shells. I always dilute it in different ratios, and I have different containers here, and I'll explain it as I go. The opaque container has some delicates that I'll bleach. The clear has glassy shells. Just ignore the bottom there. And I'll use soap in that because strong bleach will dull natural glassy shells like olives and calories. The 3 buckets in the back, one for the large shell, one for hinge shells that I'll mainly soap in that, and the larger bucket for the hardier shells I want to bleach. And I don't use low splash bleach. It doesn't work as well. Sometimes I don't even rinse off the shell. I'll just stick them straight in the bleach. The ones with a hinge, like this cockle, I'll go ahead and just rinse out, but I will add this to a separate container because I'll just use a lot of, because bleach will naturally eat down that natural hinge, and then you're not going to have a hinge anymore. While putting those shells in the bleach, I did want to stop here and just show you how to get the sand out of a sundial. These can really drive you nuts because the sand is almost impossible to get out of them, but I figured a way out. No, I just wanted to show you how. So having it facing you, the bottom, you go and you shake them like this and spin it in a clockwise motion, doing all that. You want to shake and spin on the surface of water. See, the sand is shot right out. And you just keep rotating and shaking at the same time, spinning this in that counterclockwise while it's facing you. The bottom side is facing you. So I'm going to shake this a little bit more to get that last little bit. So we're just going to be spinning clockwise and shaking, and it gets clean. You get all the sand out doing this way because you just have to follow the spiral. So the one on the right, we're going to clean. The one on the left is one that's already clean, and you can do this without a bucket or, having a whole bunch of water too. You can do it with a high pressure hose. And the bottom facing up, facing you, and spinning in a clockwise motion and just re-wetting it and shaking. If you have a lot of these to clean, I would suggest in the water because it's a little bit easier on your wrist. And it gets all of the sand out. So I did do a bucket switch real quick between the larger horse conch and all of these hinge shells. So all these shells, I want to maintain the hinge. So I'm going to put those together, use a lot of, I just switched the buckets so I can have the soap buckets to the left and the main bleach buckets to the right. So here's all my delicates, like just the little tiny shells that I wanted to keep in there. Now I want to keep the periostracum on this horse conch, but I need to get the green off, so I will add this to my main bleach bucket with all my shells, but I will go ahead and take that one out as soon as the green algae lightens up with that bleach, which is literally just a few minutes to like maybe an hour, because the bleach will eat off the shell's natural periostracum, and I want to maintain that periostracum. On this larger horse conch, I do want to get all the periostracum off, so I'll use more bleach on this one. For my delicates container down here, I only have them separated from the larger white bucket because I don't want them getting smashed by the hardier shells in there. But I'll use about the same amount of bleach, which I'll show you in a minute. The orange bucket now has my hinged shells, and the clear container, my glassy shells. I'll fill them up with water. Just go ahead and add some dish soap to the hinge container and this glassy container down here, and I'll just put some more water, stir it up a little bit with the hose. And then for these 3 buckets, I'll add some bleach to them. And mostly I just eyeball this. And with this larger shell here that I want to get all that periostracum off, I'll go ahead and use a lot more bleach, like a 1-to-1 ratio with the water and bleach, or even less like I am here, because it gets the job done and the bleach is expensive. And this large shell will take a couple bucket bleach exchanges in about a week to get them cleaned, and I'll show you that. And a good generic ratio for bleach to water ratio like this, I would say would be 1 part bleach to 5 to 10 parts water. I'll let everything soak for a couple hours or even overnight, but the ones with the hinges and the shiny ones, I'll only let go for like an hour or two, and then I take them out of their solution and just rinse them off, and I move on to the next. So here is the horse conch all cleaned off, that green tip with the bleach, just for like an hour or so, and I'm just going to completely remove this one because I don't want to take off any of the periostracum. I like how it kind of looks rustic with the periostracum on this one, so I will not bleach it anymore. But if you were wanting to bleach the rest of the periostracum on this, you would have to do that, and because it's a bigger shell with a lot of periostracum, it might take a few days for that to finish bleaching off. So these were my delicates that I had in here that were shiny, and I don't know why that bonnet is in there. It shouldn't be in there. That's a hardy shell. Anyways, I don't soak these overnight, just an hour or two, and I'll take them out and rinse them off. I'll do the same for the ones that I'm trying to clean but maintain the hinge as well. These spiny jewel boxes, I want to get a little bit cleaner, so I'm going to bleach solution on these, but I don't want to damage the natural hinge on them. So I'll take a small container and just longer bleach solution from the bucket here and just let these soak as well, but let the hinges stick out of the water so they're not deteriorating with the bleach, and then they can get clean. And you can do this with any hinge shell like that. Sometimes I'll have them all cocked in different angles in a bucket to make sure the hinge stays above the water. And the rest of these in the bucket that are hinged, like the Sunray Venus clam, are pretty much done. So I'll flush the bucket out with water and fill it up with water just to let the water sit for a little bit, and then I'm done with the hinged shells. With these bleach buckets, it is 3 days later, and this large horse conch, it's coming along nice, but it's going to need some more time to soak. But time got away from me, and these other 2 buckets, I don't usually let soak for more than overnight, but they're fine soaking longer. So I just rinse them out, just dump the water out, and I do rinse them maybe a few times, and then I just let them soak in water for like a half an hour just to break up the bleach. And I'll do the same with this bucket too, just empty it and I'll rinse it out, a few times, and then just fill it up with water and just let it sit for just a little bit, just to let that bleach dissolve, make sure it's dissolved through the shell. So this horse conch is coming along pretty nice, and I'm going to soak it for a few more days, but I want to go ahead and just pop off the barnacles, because underneath the barnacles you can see the periostracums there, and of course I want the bleach to help with that too. And I'm just using a cuticle nail pusher. After I remove all these barnacles, I will go ahead and change out this bleach water, because you can see the sediment in the bottom of the bucket. Here's the changed bleach water, and I just put the shell back in the water free of its barnacles so it can finish bleaching out the periostracum. And a few days later, it has done its job, and all the periostracum, the bleach has worked on eating all that periostracum off. And depending on your shell, it's going to gauge how long you have to soak it in the bleach. So I'm just going to rinse it just like I did the other bleach shells and let it soak a little bit in just some water to break up the rest of the bleach. And this works really good with these large queen conchs. I found these from the Keys, and the same extended bleach bath works really well on these too. My next step is picking off the beach gunk, which, I don't know, for me this is very satisfying to just sit down and do, and I'll have my phone or iPad or whatever and watch something while I'm doing a lot of shells at one time. But I choose to pick off the beach gunk after I soak things in bleach, just because it just makes things easier. Like the barnacles and the beach oyster stuff just pops off a lot easier. I particularly love using an X-Acto knife for this. Yeah, it was a little dangerous, and I have cut my thumb a few times doing this, but the payoff is just worth it to me because it just slices through the beach gunk so well. But you can use a dental pick or any instrument like the cuticle pusher to do this job as well. And after I finish taking off all the beach gunk, some of the shells do hit the bleach again just for a little bit to lighten up whatever was under that barnacle or crud. If you wanted to preserve barnacles on your shells, use little to no bleach at all. For these queen conchs that I found in the Keys, they just had this stuff cemented on the tip of all these shells, and nothing would get them off but this X-Acto knife. So I'm very thankful that I have been using this X-Acto knife because it really helped. Now, to get down in the nooks and crannies, I just couldn't even use the X-Acto knife. They had these like weird recessed black circles of stuff. I don't mind the circles, but I didn't want them black. So I did pull out my Dremel for these, which I don't have to do very often, but every now and then I need the help of the Dremel to help. And it's just a cutting bit on the tip of that, and that really just helps get all the other crud right on out of the tips of those shells. Now, these were lace murexes that I found in a dredge pile. I would probably just pass up shells like this, but to me they were worth saving, but they were hard to clean. And I went ahead and used my X-Acto knife to pop and pry these after they've been soaking in some bleach. But I just could not get them like clean. So I did find the use of a steel brush like this one here, just a small one, very handy. And I kind of would like just poke it and swipe it and do that really fast to get a lot of the surface clean. And I'll acid clean these too, and I'll go into that a little bit later. So a stainless steel brush can also help remove beach gunk from shells. I'm going to come back to this steel wool a little bit later, but what about shells that you want to get the beach gunk off, but you don't want to acid dip this because that will take the natural shine off of this shell? I'm not going to use the steel wool yet, but I am going to use 2000 grit sandpaper to remove the beach scum off of this cowrie in particular right here. And it will not dull the shell. I just wet it. You want to keep dust down when I'm filing. I'll get into filing a little bit later. I always like to try to do everything wet to keep dust down, and you wear a mask and do what you need to keep yourself safe. So I'll just scrub it a little bit, and it removes the calcium buildup on like smooth shells like this off. You can't do it with textured shells because, you know, you got all the grooves. So acid cleaning is going to really help with that, which we'll get into. So this 2000 grit sandpaper is really nice to use on smooth shells to help get that calcium buildup removed. And it really worked well for the cowries. So I was like, should I try it on my Junonia? And I did, because it didn't dull the cowrie. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try it on this Junonia. I had purchased this from a shell show, and it had a little bit of the calcification on just the outer lip here, just a little bit. And I was like, okay, let's try the Junonia. Let's try the Junonia. And it worked. It took it right off, and it did not dull the shell at all. So this sandpaper is really nice if you just have a little bit of calcification to take off from a smooth shell. But I have tried these with this fighting conch. I already started to remove a little bit of the buildup here. I'll just go ahead and remove a little bit more. Sometimes you can find really special fighting conchs, like the purple ones or really, really dark ones, and you don't want to acid clean them. You don't want to keep applying mineral oil because mineral oil will disguise a little bit of that calcification also, and I'll talk about that when I get to polishing shells. But with the mineral oil, you do have to keep reapplying it for the life of your shell because the shell just keeps absorbing and absorbing the mineral oil. And what I'm showing you here is how you can permanently remove most of that calcification. And to speed up this process, I have come across these finishing buffing bits for my Dremel using the more softer one that came in the set. Again, using these, you do want to keep dust down by keeping everything wet, and wear a mask as you see fit so you're not breathing in shell dust. You don't want to do that. Here is the shell pretty much finished. I can keep going, but like you can see, it keeps the shine and removes that calcium carbonate buildup. My next step in cleaning shells is to use 6% hydrogen peroxide soak. And I do not use hydrogen peroxide for anything else. Okay, well, I will go into sand dollars real quick, but I use it for nothing else in regards to cleaning a shell, except for removing the iron sulfide staining from them. These clips with the wood background are from a detailed cleaning video using the hydrogen peroxide that I did in early 2025, and I'll go ahead and link that in this video's description. The hydrogen peroxide works very well on thinner shells that I've come across. The thicker, more denser shells, I haven't had as much success cleaning all of the staining out of those. After finding tons of lion's paws with dark staining, I was determined to find a solution to get rid of the dark staining. And after Googling like what gets iron sulfide staining out, I landed on hydrogen peroxide, and I did originally start using the 3% to try to get them clean, and it would work a little bit, but I just needed something with a little bit, more of a punch. So I found out that 6% is the highest, safest recommended household use, and I had a lot of luck using that. Anything else 12% and higher is really considered professional use, so I do not recommend using the 12% or anything stronger. So that's why I've always promoted using just 6% strength. So I'm placing all of the dark stained shells into the pure hydrogen peroxide 6%. Just pop a cover on it and just let it sit for a day, even up to a week. I've soaked shells for a week, but just note, the longer you soak a shell in hydrogen peroxide, a white film will appear on the surface of the shell. So I don't soak them any longer than I need to once, I'm looking at them and okay, the iron sulfide is removed. That haze can be corrected using mineral oil or an acid dip, which we'll get into in a little bit. So I'm just taking them out now of the hydrogen peroxide, the ones that are done. And this black container is just pure water, and I'll just let them sit in the water just for a little bit to break up. Make sure all the hydrogen peroxide is broken up in the shell, and then that's it. That's exactly how I clean with the hydrogen peroxide for seashells. You can also use hydrogen peroxide to clean sand dollars. These are very fresh sand dollars. I haven't even rinsed them off with water. They came straight out of my delicates container from shelling after a storm. I believe this was on Kais Island, and I found a lot of freshly deceased sand dollars. That's why they are so dark. They are not alive. I do not take alive anything from the beach. You can use 3% hydrogen peroxide for this, but I have a lot of the 6% hydrogen peroxide, so that's exactly what I used in this container. I did try to clean that round urchin you see there, but it broke, so I have nothing to show you how I clean that, but you can use the hydrogen peroxide to clean those as well. I have bleached those too. So this is what I used in here, just the 6%, because I do have it by the gallon. I have an Amazon influencer storefront where I have items like the 6% hydrogen peroxide and other things that I'm using in this video and others that I'll link in this video's description so you can have a purchase reference. So these sand dollars are almost clean, and I only had to change the hydrogen peroxide this one time, and a few days later they really got so white. It's just mind-blowing how this cleaned so well. And you can use the 3% on these too, but I had the 6%. And I just love it. The bleach, you can bleach these, but the bleach, I heard, makes them more weak and brittle. So I don't bleach them anymore. And to dispose of the 6% hydrogen peroxide, you just dilute in a bunch of water. My next cleaning step, which I think is my favorite, is to acid clean the shells, because the transformation is just crazy cool. And this step is for when you can see the white calcium buildup on the outside of these shells. You can use muriatic acid, but I use Acid Magic, the safer alternative to muriatic acid. But I understand some places you can't get the magic acid, so you can use the muriatic acid, and I will link a video in this video's description to a detailed tutorial about how to use muriatic acid, because you have to use a lot more caution than the Acid Magic. So I just filled up a container. I usually keep like this covered lid container nearby, and I will use my acid up until the acid doesn't clean the shells anymore. And I do not dilute the acid, I use it at full strength. And I'll show you safely how to neutralize the acid to dispose of it. Acid cleaning will take off the natural shine of the shell, but I'll show you ways of how you can restore that shine back to your shells. And I just dip them for a few seconds. I rather dip more than once than over dip it, because it does eat the shell, and that's how it's getting it clean. So you can't eat through your shell if you leave it in the acid for too long. You want to do this in a nice, well-ventilated area, because even though it's safer than muriatic acid, you're still dealing with acid. You can use gloves if you have hand sensitivity, and make sure you're protecting your eyes from splashes. But you can touch this acid, and it's not going to burn your hand like muriatic acid will do. Look how wonderful this lion's paw turned out. I've been saving this paw just to dip it in this cleaning video. And here's a bay scallop. Scallops are really fun to acid clean, because they just you can just see all the pretty colors that show through once you acid dip them. So this blue container is just filled with water. So right after I acid dip it, I will dip it straight in the water to neutralize the acid, and just, you can go back and forth until it's to the desired acid cleaning that you do want. Quick, short dips. You don't want to overdo it, because I have burned a few lion's paw shells, like burned holes through my shells. I'm like, oh no. These whelks are really fun to clean in the acid too. And I know some people are kind of nervous or a little scared to start acid cleaning, but I was too, because I wasn't using acid magic. I only knew of muriatic acid when I first started to acid clean, but there's nothing to be nervous about, just as long as you're using basic precaution. Now these are so calcified, and they're typically really shiny shells, but I had to get the calcium deposit off, so I went ahead and acid cleaned them, and I'm sticking them a little bit longer because they have really heavy calcification. And see, it's still not clean, so I'm gonna dip it again. But remember that steel wool, that is gonna come into play when we're gonna put the shine, a natural shine, back on these shells. You can use polyurethane, I'll go over that a little bit too, and the mineral oil also will shine it, but you have to keep applying the mineral oil. But oh man, when I found out about the steel wool, I was just so excited. So I'll show you I'll show you the simpleness of steel wool putting the shine back on these shells, especially shark eyes, biting conchs. I'll show you that too. All right, this shark eye is really stubborn. It's just really heavy calcified. And once it gets to the point where it's so much calcification, it's just considered fossilized, and you just can't do this. You can't burn off all of that on the shell. And see, I'm using my hand here because I'm just putting the very tip of it in, like spot acid cleaning it, so I don't have to keep, eating the part of the shell that are already clean. So you can spot clean the shells too. And we're going to work with this one, and it's really pretty. It's just amazing sometimes what's hiding under all of the whiteness in these shells. So holding this one a little bit longer also in the acid. And once you start acid dipping your shells, you get comfortable with knowing like how your acid works, like how old your acid is. The older the acid is the longer I have to put the shells in the acid. But you'll get accustomed to all that. Look at that. You can see the swirl, and it's just beautiful. And you can't get this with, just putting mineral oil on it or even polyurethane in it with all that calcium deposit on it. So I think it's just worth burning it all off and then looking at natural ways to restore the shine. So here's some more shells, and I love acid dipping apple murexes. It's like night and day with some of them. Here's the two of them compared. Here's the left one that it's not cleaned yet. If you dip a shell in water, that's how it's going to look if you mineral oil a shell. It will restore a little bit, but not as much as this. Not as much as acid can do. Once you start dipping, you'll never go back. I mean, never say never, but man, once I got over my fear of acid dipping, I'm like, how did I live without this for so long? Which it wasn't too long. Larger shells like this, I'll just acid dip one side, kind of neutralize it in the water here, and then flip it over and put the tail end in it also. Or you can use a bigger container, but I like to use as little acid as possible. Here's this shell all finished, and it's just gorgeous. I love the colors that are revealed from a good acid cleaning. Here's a larger shell, which the inside is really nice and glossy, and I don't want to dull it out by acid submerging the whole thing in the acid. So I'm just going to clean the outside of this shell and just dip the tip in it like I am here, and then I'm just going to go just rinse it off with water. Now I want to do a little bit of the backside. I'm going to bathe the outside of this with some acid with the tongs here that I'm using. You don't want to do this with muriatic acid because you can burn your hands doing this even when you have gloves on, so you got to be careful. The tips of these queen conchs that you saw me clean earlier in trying to get the beach gunk off, I just acid dipped the tips of these to help with that calcification that I ended up scrubbing off in all those little recessed ringlet areas that I had gotten. And this was old acid magic and diluted because of all the water that I'm using, so it wasn't very strong in using that, but it worked enough to clean the tips of the queen conchs. And this one in particular, I'll go back with it with the Dremel and just clean out those recessed darker areas on that. So in a lot of these steps, I'll just repeat and have in a different order. So here's another method of spot cleaning or spot acid cleaning that I'll use with shells. Like this thorny oyster just had this really heavy buildup area on this one spot. The rest of it came out clean, dipping it in water here. But I don't want to keep acid dipping it and you know, eating up the leaves, the really pretty leaves. So this is a eyedropper, like a plastic eyedropper, and I'll just squeeze some of the acid in there. Do not use this with muriatic acid again, because it's a whole nother story with muriatic acid. But with the acid magic, I think, you know, and I use, it's pretty safe to go ahead and just spot clean the shells like this, just dipping a little bit of acid on it. You can get this on your hands, but if you have the sensitivity, again, please wear gloves at all times, and you always want to protect your eyes no matter what you're using. So between the acid and some needle nose pliers to pinch off that white, I got this thorny oyster very cleaned and very happy with how the acid and all my picking methods work to clean the shell. To dispose or neutralize acid magic or even muriatic acid, this does work for the muriatic acid to neutralize it as well. I just fill up a bucket, a large bucket, and I will dump whatever was holding the acid into the bucket along with the container. And then I will pour baking soda, a huge amount of baking soda, and it will bubble up. And when it's bubbling up, it's neutralizing the acid. And I just keep putting the baking soda in until no more bubbles appear, and then I know that the acid is completely neutralized and it is safe to dispose. My next step is shell restoration. This has to do with the structure of the shell, and I use a nail file. Emery board works really well, a sanding bit, and a grinding bit for my Dremel. My go-to is a good old-fashioned emery board, good nail filing, and this works excellent on lips of shells. And again, go ahead and wet everything so you're not making shell dust. You don't want to get that in your lungs at all, and wear a mask if you need to. I am constantly wetting everything as I use it. Most times I'm doing this under running water in a sink, so it's just constant water pouring on the shell and the nail file. So I'm not worrying about shell dust, and it's perfect. Just works out perfect for the lips. And I also use it for flat scallops, all kinds of scallops, even lion paws. Just take in it and just file it straight. It's amazing, like a chipped shell. You're like, oh man, I wish that wasn't chipped. Well, just a little bit of rounding out really helps. You can use a sanding bit Dremel, but I just find a nail file, a good emery board just works really well. And you get some good quality emery boards and they'll last a while. I mean, if you get the cheap, like Dollar Tree ones, it might not last you as long, because I have used a few of those. And look at that, you can just really restore the flat shells like this. Now, okay, for something a little bit thicker like an alphabet cone, you're gonna wear out your emery board. So I do use the sanding bit on my Dremel here. To do the sanding, I'll pick a lower speed for the Dremel. You don't need to run this thing at high powered, because the sanding bit does an amazing job at smoothing these lips of these shells, especially these alphabet cones are really nice. And I'll do a whole bunch of them at the same time. And here's this alphabet cone all finished. And shells that are similar, cones or anything that has like that outer lip that just needs a little bit of refinement more than a nail file, sanding is all you need to do. Now here is a grinding bit. And this, let's see, this is a calico scallop. It broke, but it was so orange. You can kind of see the juvenile shape, you know, how it, I'm going to sculpt it down, carve it down to the juvenile layer because it's just so orange and pretty. And I don't do this with all shells, just shells that I think that are worthy of restoring down to something a little special. And these calicos are, at least for me, they're hard to find, the orange ones. So if I could take an orange broken one and save it, I will. So I went ahead and after I grinded it, I went ahead and used this sanding bit now to just finish and smooth it out. Because sometimes if you use the grinding bit too much, it'll start like chipping away too much of the shell. So I will go ahead and switch the bit to the sanding and just finish restoring and use a nail file just to give it that extra smoothness to the edges to restore my little scallop. And I think it's totally worth it on the shells that you think are worth restoring. I wanted to add this section in here with this helmet for me to restore this back to the juvenile layer, just so I have a source to guide people when they ask me, how do you restore the helmets? Because a lot of helmets I do restore. They're hard to find, and if they're broken and that inner layer is still intact, I'm gonna try my best to restore it. So I'll just use pliers, needle nose and a standard pliers, and pinch off the broken parts down to an unbroken or whatever layer next that I want to restore it to. So you can see the lip of this one. And I've seen enough of the helmets to know kind of like, okay, stop taking off shell material. This is the grinder now that I'm just grinding it. Just like I did with that little scallop, I'll just go ahead and just grind off the pieces that I broke off, still snipping with the pliers at the old layer and using the grinding tool until all of that is gone. And here's this carving bit that I can use for the intricate little parts, that little siphon area. And I'll put back on the sanding bit to this and just kind of like sand it down, just so all of the edges are smooth and there's nothing like rough or anything that will cut your fingers when you're handling the helmet. But I've had a person tell me, you didn't restore that helmet. Well, and I'm just like, oh, I've done it. I don't know if I'll put a video out of me solely doing this. I'm not sure. But I'm just using a polishing bit on this one just to give it a little bit of somewhat of a natural shine to that shell. I've restored lots of these little helmets and I've done it just like this. And it is imperative to wear a mask and protect your eyes while doing this. Here's one of those shark eyes I was acid dipping, and we're going to polish up in the next section, but it just had a little bit of a rough lip on the edge there. So just the nail file really worked on smoothing that out. And a lot of the shells that I do refine, it just involves a little bit of nail filing with the nail file. Okay, so something like this a little bit bigger, I have to break out the Dremel again, and I will use the grinding bit first, and I will follow the natural shape of that lip. Like I've seen some, like, you know, shell shops, like where they just cut the shells like all the way straight. It just doesn't look natural. So I try to go with the flow of, you know, you can see the growth lines in the whelk. So I just try to match that whenever I am grinding down or finishing the lip of a shell to keep that natural flow. So here's the sanding bit on it, and it's just to go ahead and make it a little bit smoother. And there was a little like thing on the corner I couldn't get, and this was the shell that I didn't want to acid clean the inside because I didn't want to take that shine off. But the shine will come off of this little spot, but I'd rather have no no dark spots. So I'll just use the sanding bit to clean that area. And I want to smooth this sanded out area because the shell is naturally shiny inside. So I found this finishing buff, which is a bit softer than the one that I showed you before when I was taking off the calcification with that fighting conch. So I'll use this buff to smooth this area on this shell. And this bit simulates the steel wool, in which I'll talk about next. And my final step for cleaning my shells is polishing them, and I'm going to show you a few different ways on which I polish. So let's start with these two moon snails, and that steel wool is going to come into play right now. This is super fine grade. Now this is old steel wool that I had in the garage. I don't know how old it is, but when I heard about this, I went to the garage to find it as soon as I could to go apply this method. You wet the steel wool using super fine grade 0000 and rub it on the shell, and it will actually restore the shine. Like, hello, this is mind-blowing. I've never heard of this before, and I have to thank Donna. Thank you for sharing this with me. We were emailing back and forth, and she's like, oh yeah, I use steel wool to, restore the shine. And I'm like, what? You use what to restore the shell? I'm like, no way. As soon as I finished my email to her, I went and got like a dull shark eye and went straight to the sink, straight to the garage to go find the steel wool. And I found this old package, and I couldn't believe it. It glossed up this shell. I was like, are you kidding me? Steel wool? And you don't even have to put a lot of effort in this. I mean, it's a little, a little elbow grease here, but I couldn't believe it worked. And she was telling me that it works great on shark eyes, fighting conchs, any shell that kind of has that smooth, texture that doesn't have like a lot of ridges, like scallops. It doesn't really work on that because they're not smooth. At calories, this works good for. I couldn't believe it. I was like, look at that. And this is outside in the sun, so it's not going to appear as shiny. I'll show you in a few minutes. I'm going to show you what this looks like inside. And it's really shiny. So Donna, thank you. You've changed my life with this steel wool. And I really hope that, okay, here's it compared. This one's not steel wooled yet, but let's go ahead and woolify it and make it shiny. But Donna, thank you so much for sharing this with me. And I really hope that this tip changes some lives of some shellers, because it's amazing. I can't believe it. I mean, this is just like fabulous that this steel wool does it. Okay, so let's try this off. And look how glossy that is. And I'm going to show you this inside when it's even really glossy. It looks like I put oil on it or something. But I can't believe it. It restored the shell. So you can acid dip like your nasty shark eyes. And this is the same polisher I was just using on the inside of that whelk. It kind of simulates steel wool, because I was just like, okay, what can make this a little bit quicker for me? And yeah, this bit is really helpful. So let's take a look at it again, and it's even glossier. I can't wait to show you this inside. So just hang with me a little bit longer. We're almost done. If you come through this video this far, thank you so much for watching, or just skipped around. I hope you can find some more parts that were helpful. Okay, here's it under the shade a little bit. But these were matte, like velvet looking after I acid dipped them in the magic acid. And to not have to polyurethane them, or this is just, I just love the steel wool. Okay, we're gonna try it on a fighting conch. I acid dipped this one too, and see how it's like that velvety texture when it comes out. And I just ran some steel wool on this one too. How cool is that? This is so nice. All right, just gonna file the lip here just a tad. Go ahead and wipe this off and see what kind of shine we get just running some steel wool across it. Look, it's a little bit glossier. This is so cool. Okay, so here we'll pull out we'll call this the big guns. This is like my steel wool mimicker. I wish there was another Dremel bit like the steel wool that was just a little bit bigger. Look at that. Look at how glossy that is. This is just amazing. This literally has just turned my little shell restoring world upside down, because I would normally have to use like either oil or just polyurethane the shell, or just, forget the shine. And here's it compared. Look at that. The left one is steel wooled and that right one wasn't. Oh, just wonderful. Okay, so I'm like, I got excited. I'm like, how about my calorie? Let's put a little, this calorie wasn't too dull. So let's see if we can shine it up a little more with this steel wool. And again, this is outside, and I'm going to show you these inside where you can see the shine a little bit better. Like even when I'm doing my beach walks, when I'm trying to show a shiny shell in the direct sunlight, you really can't tell. Okay, here's it in the shade. It glossed up. I was like, yay, the shell is glossy, and I haven't even added oil to it. So when you do, I mean, I love adding mineral oil to like all my shells, and it's just really pretty. Okay, here's a whelk. Now it has a lot of recessed areas, so I was like, well, will it work on a whelk? So I'm gonna try it on a whelk a little bit. I didn't get the Dremel out on the whelk. I just rubbed it a little bit because I wanted to see, you know, it's got recessed areas that's not smooth. The steel wool and buffing only really works really good on a shell that has the smooth surface. But look, it's a little bit shinier. It's not so matte. So, hello, it even works. And this works great on tulips that I've found so far, but not olives. Now, olives, I don't know, they just, maybe they have something different. I just hadn't had success. Even on this Junonia that I used earlier to show you how you can use 2000 grit sandpaper to take off a little bit of the calcium buildup, I went ahead and look at that, it's shiny. Now I don't even need to add oil to this Junonia. This is so cool. If you find this helpful, please spread the message about using a super fine grade steel wool. You know, just like the 6% hydrogen peroxide kind of, I don't know, in my little world, I'll say it went viral. But let's just make steel wool buffing go viral to put the shine on the shell. Look at this. This is not, that's no oil. This is just buffing. Buffing with steel wool. And here's one that is not shined yet, just a little bit wet on the side, but it's transformative because these fighting conchs, you find them and they're really pretty, some of them, but it's like, I can't really acid clean them. Do I have to live with a little bit of the calcium buildup? Do I have to oil them all the time? Nope, you don't have to. But here's an alternative. Now you can polyurethane shells too, and I still polyurethane shells even with this buffing thing in my back pocket. And I'll just go ahead and use a thin acrylic brush, and I love doing the Gaudy Nauticas with the polyurethane. And Gaudy Nauticas have a high gloss natural shine anyway, so I will use a glossy polyurethane. Now if I'm doing the fighting conch or like a tulip, they're not really that glassy shine, so I'll use what you see on the other side. The other polyurethane in the can is a semi-gloss, so I'll just use both of those. You can spray polyurethane, but I just find I have more control when I paint it on, because I've ruined a lot of shells with bubbles or too many drips when I spray it. So I've just kind of given up spray and just use the paint for the shells. For different projects and stuff like shell flowers, I will use a can spray because I'm only lightly coating the project, not like heavily saturating everything. So here's a few other examples of fighting conchs that I have polyurethaned. And here's the one that we polished with the steel wool and the buffing. And look at that, side by side. The left one is highly polished and the right one is the one I semi-gloss polyurethaned. And this is life-changing for me. Like, I don't have time to go ahead and polish everything. It's just easier to apply polyurethane. But man, I am so thankful for that steel wool and the polishing bit that I found for my Dremel. This is a natural fiber brush, and I like to use this to apply my mineral oil to my shells. And this is the final thing that I will do to every shell that I have not added polyurethane to. I'll just go ahead and coat it with a light coat of mineral oil, even the shells that are naturally matte. So here's our polished shell, and look at that, just with a little added mineral oil. Super glossy and shiny. And here, this one didn't even need it, but I was like, okay, since I'm here mineral oiling shells, I'll go ahead and give that one some oil. We'll add it to this Junonia as well. Even though it didn't need it, it had that shine that we were able to buff it to. The same thing with this cowrie. And the mineral oil I use is just baby oil, which is mineral oil and fragrance. And this one I have lavender fragrance. So here's that line spot that cleaned up really, really nice. And just add a little bit of oil. I like using the brush because it just gets in the nooks and the crannies of the shells. And you can wipe off excess oil when you add it, but I just leave it on there because this oil, the shell will absorb the oil and it won't be like as liquidy, like look wet. It'll look more like it's revived, like it's got some lotion on it. And we'll just do it to the whelk. And these, the base scallops like this and the calico scallops look really nice also. And I've noticed with base scallops, they can soak that oil so nice. And even after a long time, like you don't need to apply mineral oil, because with mineral oil, please note that you do need to reapply it at some point because it just gets super absorbed into the shell and then it won't like have a gloss anymore. And sometimes if you just coated the white calcified shells to disguise it with the mineral oil, it could come back once that mineral oil absorbs in really good with the shell. But with that said, here's an example of a few shells that I actually did not acid clean, and you can see it has that layer of chalky calcium carbonate buildup on it, and mineral oil will hide it temporarily for a good while, but not permanently. From what I've seen, you need to reapply it at some point later on. But if you're not into acid cleaning or don't have access to acid magic or muriatic acid, this is an alternative. Now, some people have even used white vinegar, and that does help too to take off some of that buildup. But I don't like working with vinegar. From my experience working with it, I think it makes the surface of the shell a little bit too rough. So I don't promote using the vinegar, but it can be used. Vinegar does act like a slow performing acid. But all these shells have been acid cleaned and picked cleaned, so they should just get, more matte, not necessarily the calcified looking again. And here's that tulip, and so I'll just go ahead and apply this to all my shells. Here's that horse conch that I wanted to preserve the periostracum, and when you give this a good coat of mineral oil, you want to keep the mineral oil coated on it, because over time, if you don't keep it mineral oiled, it will flake and most likely just come off over time, but I'll preserve it as long as I can. Here are those lace murexes with some added mineral oil on them that I had showed you in the part where I was picking off the beach gunk from those and using the steel brush. So they came out pretty good too, and a nice coat of mineral oil on them with all the steps that I used. Acid clean those as well. And that's how I clean my shells. I'm very meticulous and enjoy cleaning my shells, and I hope laying it all out like this was helpful in some part to what you're looking for and cleaning your own shells. Please be safe and use caution, and thank you for watching.